Though he reigned only 87 days, the fact that Pertinax was the son of a freedman and was able to rise to the literal heights of imperial power, I think is a story worth learning about. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and in this video, we're going to be doing a book review. So I think this is the first one I've done in like a year or two. I used to do them a lot more, but we're going to be bringing that back to the channel for sure. And this today is Pertinax, the son of a slave who became a Roman emperor by Simon Elliot. I was sent this by Pen and Sword Books a long time ago, so I do apologize that it's just now getting reviewed and whatnot. I think there's a couple others as well. But like always, the reviews are unbiased, and I always like usually. There's only been a few books that I don't think I have like any critique at all. But anyways, let's just go ahead and get started. And I usually do start off with the pros of a book just to start off on a good note. And one thing I really enjoyed about this book was there's a ton of social history throughout the book. And I think partly is because I had never seen a biography of Pertinax before. And I think the main reason is there's just not a lot of source material that has come down to us, like, you know, over the passage of time and stuff. So in a way, there's almost like not enough to really fill out a nice biography of Pertinax, unfortunately. So in that sense, you know, the book has to be sort of fleshed out with, I wouldn't say tangents, but anytime something's kind of brought up, you know, like, obviously he has a lot of like military campaigning and stuff. You know, you have a chapter just on what it's kind of like to be, you know, a legionnaire in, you know, the 2nd century AD in the Roman military. So, like I said, it's really good social history, but in a way, it's kind of just padding the book out. I think besides some like little tidbits and stuff, which some of them are actually really like good. I'll get to one of those in a little bit. I think it's just like under halfway. I'd say probably like 40% of the book before you really get going into like Pertinax. It's like actual like I guess like, you know, narrative, if that makes sense. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do feel like some of the introductory stuff was a little too much. I don't think we need like a rundown of literally every, like just a brief overview of every province in the Roman Empire, you know, in the 2nd century. You know, maybe just the ones that Pertinax is kind of like dealing with, like some of the ones out east and like Britain, for example, where he was like governor for a little while, stuff like that. But anyways, I will say, like I said, one of the big highlights is the first real chapter of the book. Is dealing with, so it's a really good setup where Pertinax is the son of a freedman. There's a discussion on slavery in the Roman Empire during this time period, as well as the manumission of slavery, which is how you kind of earned your freedom, the different ways you could go about doing that in the 2nd century, as well as the kind of the system of patronage, which is really important in this time, which is, for those who don't know, is sort of when a more powerful figure, you know, either more wealthy name, you know, that kind of stuff, more gravitas, has like a kind of clientele that, I don't want to say flock to him, but are kind of like attached to him, and the relationship has different perks for like each of the parties. And it kind of goes over that system because that does play a role in Pertinax's kind of career change. For example, like one of the tidbits I was talking about is I didn't know Pertinax was a grammarian for the first part of his adult life, which is essentially just like a private like teacher, which I thought was really interesting. And then he has like, you know, discussion on like what that's actually, you know, kind of like, you know, in the Roman Empire, which I thought was really good. But in Pertinax's case, it's very interesting because generally going along the cursus honorum, where you're kind of, when you're part of like the aristocracy, or, you know, you have a good name, pedigree, or whatever behind you, there's like the certain way you kind of rise up through the ranks with the cursus honorum, and Pertinax kind of, or in general, you do that at starting from a young age. Where Pertinax, I think, was like in his 30s when he just like was like, I'm just gonna start like a military career and stuff, because he had like the patronage backing to do so. But like I was saying, there's a lot of good introductory stuff and kind of like social histories and everything like that. And then once you even get to the Pertinax narrative itself, it is done really well. I will say he does point out some of the flaws that Pertinax may have done. Such as, you know, maybe trying to do too many sweeping measures and things. I'll get to that in just a little bit. Kind of all at once when people just like aren't ready for it. But just kind of a brief overview for those who don't know. Pertinax is the emperor who took over after Commodus, which if you've seen the movie Gladiator, that's kind of like the quasi-fictional, emperor, Commodus, the son of Marcus Aurelius. When he is assassinated, basically it wasn't probably super well planned out. It's kind of like the gist that we're kind of getting. And Pertinax kind of happened to be, kind of the elder statesman without much like kind of, he didn't have his character like besmirched yet too badly. So he kind of is like the natural I don't want to say fall guy. He's the natural kind of like replacement figure. As he was the co-consul with Commodus over the city of Rome during that time period. Unfortunately, he was very much set in his ways as far as, we're not, like, Commodus's reign was not traditional. We got to get things like kind of under control. We got to get the budget in order. We got to, do all this, that, get the borders like secured and everything. And unfortunately for him, it did seem he had the loyalty of the people in the Senate pretty well in place. But the Praetorians just, from what, like I said, it's obviously hard to tell just because like the source material isn't like super detailed. And the ones that we do, for example, the Historia Scriptoris Augusta, for those who know classics and stuff, it's not, the greatest source, but it's kind of like our primary one we got to work with Pertinax's reign. Where was I going with it? Oh yeah, it kind of shows that he just did not have a good read on the Praetorians, and when he kind of tried to discipline them and kind of show them that things are going to be like changing like real fast, he just didn't like it, and eventually just kind of like offed him, unfortunately, after only 3 months in power. And he's the first emperor of the year of 5 emperors. For those who don't know, there was essentially after that the Praetorians, after they execute Pertinax, they had a literal auction for the seat of emperor in the Roman Empire. Like no joke, like asking for bids between a couple like different like wealthy individuals and stuff, and Didius Julianus eventually like bought the throne. But as the year of 5 emperors kind of alludes to, he was not one to stick around for much longer either. But like I said, overall, this is really good kind of biography describing sort of his rise through the ranks after his like transition in the 30s, in his 30s, into a couple of different military outposts, some out in like the Mesopotamian region, getting transferred to Britain and stuff. And for example, when he was in Britain, he almost got like executed by like his like legionnaires that were under his command, because basically he was probably being a little bit too much of a disciplinarian as well. But anyways, like I said, I think he's a kind of an important emperor to just like understand. This is kind of like the storm before like the hurricane, or I don't know, the storm before the storm. Actually, isn't that like a book now? I think it is. I think I read it too. Before the crisis of the 3rd century, you kind of have, Marcus Aurelius, I think Commodus starting the kind of the slide towards disorder and stuff. Then you got like the Severan dynasty for a little bit, but this is kind of like the beginning of the end of like the glorious like Pax Romana era. And like I said, just the fact that he was the son of a former slave rising all the way up to like imperial power, I think it's just a pretty cool story. And before I get done, there is a couple of plates in here that I find are like really cool. There are some really high quality photographs and whatnot here, like some of the archaeological stuff. Like that's probably like his like former like villa when he was like governor in Britain for a little bit and stuff. There's a lot of stuff on like the column of Trajan and things like that, kind of showing like the different like military kind of like equipment and things, and like kind of evidence for different things. So I thought it was actually really cool. And there's actually quite a few of them. A lot of these history books have like might have like 4 or 5, and they have like a whole like slew of them right there in the middle of the book. Overall, I really enjoyed it. It filled some gaps in my knowledge. I've read some books on like Septimius Severus and a lot of the other emperors a few generations before, like Hadrian, Trajan, and stuff like that. But obviously never one on Pertinax. I think this might be the first one in English. But I feel like if you want to learn about this kind of era, like I said, like the end of the 2nd century AD, or Pertinax or Commodus or anything like that, I think you'll actually learn quite a bit, just because even if you're a beginner, there is a lot of social history and kind of background information given. I feel like in some cases it might be a little bit much for the fact that's, supposedly like a biography on Pertinax, but I really, really enjoy social history, so it didn't bother me at all. But anyways, there you have it. That was Pertinax, the son of a slave who became a Roman emperor. Let me know what you think down below if you're interested in Roman history and stuff. I think the When in Rome readathon is coming up in March, so that might be a read for some people to try out. But anyways, whether you're reading books on the Roman emperors or not, always remember, read victoriously.